So the first thing we want to do is load up the Scratch web page. So I can actually use the Google search. So I can type in Scratch and scratch.mit.edu is usually the first link at the top. Or I can type scratch.mit.edu, which is the URL, the Uniform Resource Locator, in the URL bar here. So that's scratch.mit.edu, and that will load up the Scratch website. Now, usually you will get to the Scratch homepage, which will look something like this. What you will need to do is if you do not have an account yet, you will need to join Scratch, or you can sign in using your login details. Bear in mind that Scratch does not allow you to use your name or anything that can identify you for your login details. So I'm going to log in using my login details. And in order to create a new project, we're going to go straight and click on Create. So we have a brand new blank canvas, which is going to load up in a second. Now, Scratch is really good. It's something called block coding. So what that means is we will use the blocks on the left-hand side. We can simply drag them in and in order to create our code. So we have loads of different blocks of code here. And as you can see, these are arranged by color. And each color refers to a different type of category. And we do have the categories on the left-hand side here as well. So we've got motion, we have looks, we have sound, events, control, sensing, operators, variables, and my blocks. We will be going through some of them as we need them. But for now, we will be thinking about motion, looks, and sound. Motion refers to the movement of your character. Looks, the way your character looks, and if you want to change that. Sound is obviously if we're going to make any sounds. We're also interested in events. So what could happen in order to control our sprite or in order to cause anything else to happen. And control, we have blocks of code in order to help with our coding. So they're the 5 that we're worried about for now. So here's my categories of codes. Here are my blocks of code itself. We have costumes as well. So each of my sprites would have, I can design the way it would look. And we have sounds. So my characters, also known as sprites, can make sounds as well. So that one made a little meowing noise. So that's my categories of code. These are my blocks of code. These are my different things I can edit within my sprite. Any code which I use will be going onto this huge white area here. So I will have all of my coding here. This is where I can preview what my program actually looks like. And I can change the size of this using these few buttons here. Now, all of my sprites that I build will come here. I may have one sprite within one program. I can have loads of sprites. Sprites are things, characters within your game, which you can actually code. They can move around. They can do certain things. And these are the properties for the sprite. So we may want to rename it using this box here. We may want to play around or check its coordinates. The coordinates are based on the canvas itself. So 0, 0 is where it is right now, which is bang in the middle. If I move it, let's just say slightly to the right, as we can see, my y-axis stayed the same. However, my x-axis went up to 57. I can move this to the left a bit. Okay, and it moves down slightly, a very tiny bit. So it's -2 on the y-axis, -96 on the x-axis. If I move it up here, 128 on the y-axis, -174 on the x-axis. I can decide whether I want my sprite to show or hide, but I can also incorporate that into the code. And obviously for that, I'll go to the look section. I can change the size of my sprite, and I can also change the direction that my sprite is facing. So these are my characters, the things I can code, get them to move around. I can also change my stage, also known as my backdrop. And this is what is in the background. I can also code it as well. However, we do have no motion blocks on my stage. because I cannot get my motion, my backdrop to move itself. If I want to create or add any new sprites or backdrops, I can simply hover over these two icons here, and these will give me a range of options. So I have choose a backdrop, so this will bring me up a library that I can choose from, and I can paint my own backdrop as well. I can upload a backdrop, so I may have a backdrop that I've created somewhere else, so I may have got an image also off the internet, or I can use this as a surprise, which will choose one from the library itself. So let's start to code. The first thing I'm going to do is load up a new backdrop. Now, what we're going to be coding is a music band. Okay, so I'm going to have a backdrop. It will be something as if my characters are performing, and then I will add a few sprites and have my sprites perform. So let's choose a backdrop, and we have this library of backdrops which we can choose from. Now we want to think about which one could be a good place to perform. So a spotlight would be good. Okay, concert would be good as well. But these are very obvious. You can choose them. They're very relevant to use. However, the beauty of Scratch is we can be as playful and as creative as we want. So I'm actually going to have my characters perform in space. So that's the backdrop I've got so far. So I've got the backdrop in space. I'm not going to edit that at all. And now I'm going to add my sprites. So I'm going to hover over this icon here. Again, I can choose a sprite from their library. I can paint my own sprite. I can use a surprise sprite, which would pick one at random. And I can upload my sprite as well. I'm going to choose one from the library. Now, these are all the characters I can use in my programs. There's loads of different sprites here. I do have a few categories at the top if I did want to filter it down. Or I can just scroll down and have a quick look. And I'm actually going to use, let's put Sasha in. So I'm looking at Sasha, I'm just hovering over her. By hovering, I mean that my mouse is on top of Sasha, but I'm not clicking down. So let's click on Sasha, and this is showing me all of their costumes. So let's click on Sasha. Okay, now at the moment, Sasha has not been coded at all. Let's look at the costumes. So we have 3 costumes, which I can code. We're going to keep the first one for now. And let's see, Sasha comes with a pop sound. Now, I'm not really entirely happy with that. So what I will be doing is I'm going to use a different sound. Now, if you look at that, as I hover over that, it's brought me a similar menu to what we had before. So I can choose a sound, I can record a sound, I can use a surprise sound, or I can upload a sound. So let's choose a sound from here. So I have loads of different sounds. Most of these are to do with musical instruments. As I scroll down, I may find something that I like. And as I hover over one, if I hover over the play symbol, it will give me a little preview of that sound. So let's find something which could be in voice. Let's try beatbox. Okay, so quite short there. Let's find something that we like. Okay, we're going to use Singer 2. So now that I've selected that, Singer 2 will pop up in the sound section for my sprite. Now we are going to get to coding. So what I want to do is I want to go to events, and these are things which will actually control the game or the project, or something which anyone who's actually creating this, or sorry, using this, can actually use to interact with the project. So the most important events that we have are when my green flag is clicked, when a key is pressed, or when the sprite is clicked. So these are the 3 which we will probably end up using the most. So the first one I have is when my green flag is clicked. So I have my green flag and my red stop sign here. And what this does is that this allows me to start my program or to stop my program. So I would use this if I wanted anything to happen as soon as someone starts the program. I have when the space key is pressed, and where we see this drop down key, this drop down arrow would allow me to select other keys from the keyboard. So we have space, up, down, left, right, any key. We have the alphabet, and we have the 10 numbers, so 0 all the way to 9. And then we also have when this sprite is clicked. What I want is whenever somebody clicks on my sprite, I want Sasha to sing. So which of these three am I going to use? That's correct. I'm going to use when this sprite is clicked. So these two which I do not want, I will simply drag them back over to this list, and that will delete them. So when this sprite is clicked, I want Sasha to sing. Where am I going to go to ask Sasha to sing? That's right. I'm going to go to sound. And I'm simply going to use one of the play sounds. So I have play sound singer 2 until done. I have start sound singer 2 as well. The one which I will use, because I want Sasha to continue with that one piece of sound until done. So I'm going to simply use play sound until done. Now the difference between these two is that this will play it until it's done, and then it will move on to the next piece of code if I was to have more than one piece of code. Or I can use a start sound, which will simply start the sound and then go into the next one. So now that I've coded that, I've joined them two together. When I click on Sasha, what is it going to do? Is Sasha going to play the sound until done or just start the sound? Which one? It is this one. So as we can see, some beautiful singing there. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to test something out. We're going to ask Sasha to also go to a random position. So let's see what happens. I'm going to click on Sasha. The sound was played, and when it's finished, that's when Sasha went to a random position. Let's do the same with this one. So as we can see, Sasha is moving to a random position at the same time as singing, whereas over here, Sasha moved once it was done. Okay, so if I was to put multiple sounds after this, it will play them one after the other. This one will simply do them at the same time. So that's one thing we need to think about when coding. So if you want to go ahead and code, we do not want this cat anymore. So I'll simply click on sprite 1, and I can click on that bin there. And I have my sprite. So I'm going to move this back over here. I'm going to get rid of this. That's my first character for my band. Now let's see if we can add some more characters. So again, I'm going to choose another sprite. I'm going to choose a Nina dance. Okay, so I've got a Nina dancing as well. Let's see what costumes a Nina comes with. Also quite a nice dance routine there. Okay, and what I'm going to say is when Anina is clicked, let's see, where am I going to go for when Anina is clicked? Notice I've selected Anina here. I'm going to head over to events. When this sprite is clicked, now I want Anina to go through all of her moves. Which one of these three am I going to head to? That's right, I'm changing the way that she looks. I'll simply go to the costume section, which we have here. So I've got switch costume to a certain costume. I also have next costume. So I will ask Anina straight away. She will start off with the first costume, which is called Anina Stance. As I head over to costumes, I can see the name of that costume there. And as you can see, I have 13 different dance moves. So where's Anina Stance? All the way at the top. So once Anina is clicked on, she will go to her stance. And what I'm going to ask her to do is I'm going to ask her to then move to the next costume. So let's click on her. There you go. She moved on to the next costume. Now, what's happening is as I'm clicking on Anina, she's switching back to stance and to the next costume. But it's happening so fast that I cannot see anything actually changing. So I'm going to head over to control and I'm going to add a delay. And my delay will be, let's do 0.5 seconds. So half a second. There we go. On to the next costume. Okay, so she was in her stance for half a second and then she went on to her next costume. Now, I want her to go through all 13 of these, or as many as we can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask her to repeat these, to repeat. And inside that repeat loop, I will ask her to wait 0.5 seconds and go to the next costume. Now, as we can see, this repeat loop, okay, it goes sort of almost round in a circle. So what that means is once we head into that loop, it's going to wait half a second, go to the next costume, and come back, wait another half a second, go to the next costume. It's going to do that 10 times because that's the number I have there. I'm going to change that to, we have 13, okay? So I'm going to repeat that 10 times for each different costume, 12 times for each different costume. It gets to the last costume. Remember there was 13, but one of them is here. So now let's click on Anina. Okay, and there she did all of her amazing moves. We can also ask her to do a few bits with the sound. Does she come with any sound? Okay, so she comes with a few bits of sound there as well. Okay, so what we can do is we can actually code her to say, when this sprite is clicked, I want you to also play one of these bits of sound as well. And you can test that out. How would you test it out? By clicking on her. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and give that a go. Once you're done, feel free to add more characters. You can add some of the instruments. You can add sounds. You can add moves. You can even add a bit of motion if you wish, but we will come back and code some motion as well.